Today we're going to be discussing the cardiovascular system. Along with that, the, sister system that goes along with the cardiovascular system known as the lymphatic system. So when we're talking the cardiovascular system, okay, this is anything and everything that carries blood, okay? This is going to start at the heart, go to the arteries, the arterioles, the capillaries, venules, veins, back to the heart. Okay, this is the complete circulatory system. Now, we humans have what is referred to as a closed circulatory system. Okay, the blood is never supposed to leave the pipes. Okay, like I just said, arteries, arterioles, capillary beds, venules, veins, heart. Boom. Okay. Now, this isn't this isn't all animals are like this. Okay. Many insects, arthropods, lower life forms, the nematodes, the worms and stuff. Many of those are going to be the open system. Okay. So our closed system, and it needs to be maintained as a closed system. Okay, anytime blood leaks out, along with the blood go all the blood proteins, all the immune proteins that are floating around in your blood, antibodies, complement, things like that. Also the white blood cells. Those get into tissues. They can actually start doing more damage to tissues than the original injury, if you were cut or something, or the original infection. So by keeping everything in the bloodstream, in the piping, blood flows throughout the body very quickly, along with the blood and all the blood products. There's going to be oxygen, there's going to be nutrients, and in the veins, you're going to see the carbon dioxide being carried away. Along with the circulatory system, there's going to be what's known as the lymphatic system. Okay? The lymphatic system is a system that runs in parallel to the bloodstream. Our bloodstream is delivering nutrients, delivering fluid to the tissues. Water leaks out in the capillary beds. As the water is leaking out, the fluid is leaking out of the bloodstream. Along with it goes gases and nutrients, sugars, amino acids, things like that. Well, here's the problem with that. The bloodstream, the arteries, deliver fluid, and a reduced volume of fluid returns to the heart via the veins. That fluid that escapes out through the capillary beds, well, that needs to be drained. If it's not drained, well, you're going to start to swell up. Think elephantitis. Elephantitis is actual, for some people, that's an actual mechanical deficiency in that the bloodstream delivers the fluid starts to pool, but it's not drained away, causing the limb, whether it's the leg, the arm, to start to swell up. So the lymphatic system, since it's running in parallel, it's removing excess fluids from the tissues. Along with those fluids are going to be any waste products, any exotoxins, endotoxins, bacteria, viruses that are not you. Anything not you is going to be drained away. And even the waste products from your cells and parts, the debris from your cells as they die and they may, due to an injury, those get drained and pulled away from the tissues. They drain, they start to get siphoned away. Siphoned, I don't know if that's a good term, but we're going to go with it. Okay. The fluid gets pulled away from the tissues and starts to enter in lymphatic vessels. Okay. lymphatic vessels are going to be pulling the fluid out of the tissues and draining it to nearby lymph nodes. Okay, the lymph nodes. You know, when you go to the doctor and they think, oh, have you been sick? And they start feeling under your jaw. Well, what they're feeling for is see if the lymph nodes there are swollen. Lymph nodes are going to be found under your jawline, armpits, groin, and spread throughout the mesentery that's, you know, holding your large and small intestine together. The lymph nodes are going to basically, they're nothing more than special little tissues that their whole point of being is housing white blood cells, your B cells, your T cells, some macrophages, neutrophils, dendritic cells, all sorts of things are going to be housed there waiting for the signal, waiting for the bat signal to go up. Except here, instead of a bat signal, it's going to be bacterial cellular waste, maybe debris from a cell that lysed because of a viral infection. Chemokines, cytokines, different signal products that are put out by cells as a warning, a flare that something bad is happening. So when you look at the figure here, to the left, you see the circulatory system you've grown up and are used to seeing. The middle one is the lymphatics, the major lymphatic vessels. Notice the lymphatic system doesn't deliver to tissues, it drains away from tissues. If you track all those different vessels, you'll see they originate in tissues, in muscle, in the skin, maybe around the large, small intestine, whatever, and then they drain, they move towards, and they start gathering together more and more, and they go to the lymph nodes. When it comes to the circulatory system, there's an amazing piece of engineering, and there is an amazing place where the least amount of damage will have the greatest impact. Turns out these two characteristics can be said for the same thing, the heart. The heart, amazing piece of engineering. It's a mechanical pump that a few weeks into gestation starts beating, and it keeps beating until it stops, and when it stops, so do you. 4 chambers, 2 on each side, upper and lower chambers. Upper chambers, atria, lower chambers, ventricles. Separated. The two sides are separated by what is known as the pericardium. The muscle is composed of intersecting muscles, different muscle tissues that all have a slight different rhythm in their contraction. This different rhythm is what gives us our heartbeat. The atria and the ventricles are separated by what is known as valves, okay? Bicuspid, tricuspid. Tricuspid is going to be separating the right atrium and ventricle. Bicuspid separates the left. The cuspid refers to how many flaps are in the valve. So when you're actually listening to somebody's heartbeat, what you're listening to is not the actual contraction of the heart, because you can't hear muscles contract. But what you can hear, lub-dub, is the tricuspid, the bicuspid valves slamming closed. As the blood is pumped due to the atria, the muscles that form the atrium they're constricting. They decrease the volume of the right atrium, which forces the blood from the atrium down to the ventricle. Back pressure forces the tricuspid valve, LUB, slam shut. Right ventricle contracts, forcing blood up, out to the lungs, and so on. Now, when it comes to the blood vessels themselves, okay, the blood vessels are a series of cells that, depending upon where you're talking, certain arteries, certain veins, certain capillary beds, whatever, these cells can be tightly joined together or they can be loosely joined together. The tighter they're joined together, the thicker the vessel wall will be, the less likely for fluid and proteins and whatnot to leak out. Get to the capillary beds where they're a little less tightly joined together, which means more fluid can get out. Along with more fluid goes more nutrients, more immunoproteins, and things like that. Now, yes, there's different layers in the tissues that make up the different blood vessels, but I'm not going to worry so much about those, so neither should you. If you really want to worry about them, take A and B. The defenses of the cardiovascular system are quite broad, okay? The defenses here that we're going to see are going to be two competing systems, okay? You're going to have the innate, which is going to be the macrophages, the neutrophils, the cells that are on patrol. Think Pac-Man, anything not you, waka, 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 waka. It goes and eats. And the learn. These are going to be the part of the immune system that has to learn first. This is going to be B cells, which once they quote unquote learn something not you, will begin making antibodies towards that. And then you have T cells. T cells are the cells that are responsible for killing infected cells. Anytime one of your cells gets infected with a virus, it's a T cell that will come along and tell it to die. To die. B cell, T cell versus the innate, the macrophages, the neutrophils, the natural killer cells. Which one is going to respond is going to be determined by, well, what the infection of the bloodstream is. Is it a virus? Is it fungal? Is it bacterial? Viruses are basically, remember, it's one gets into a cell, hundreds, thousands come out, spread to neighboring cells, infect, blah, blah, blah. So the viruses being in the bloodstream is very transient, okay? Because in the grand scheme of things, the viruses don't want to be out in the blood, they want to be in the cells, because then when they're in the cells, they're better chance of being protected. So macrophages, neutrophils getting at the viruses is going to be a limited chance. Greater chance that T cells are going to recognize that there's a viral infected cell, and the T cells are just going to come and tell that cell to die. That cell, your cell that's infected, when it dies, it just collapses in on itself. Collapses like a bag, sealing in all the viruses. If we're talking bacteria, most bacteria that are going to be able to infect the blood, they're going to be free floating around in the blood. That means macrophages, neutrophils are going to get first dibs at them, because it's going to take a few days, up to a week or so, for B cells to learn there's something new. Once the B cells learn, they'll start making antibodies, Antibodies will then bind up the bacteria, keep them from being able to attach. If they can't attach, it means the macrophages, the neutrophils, can now get at them. Viremia, fungemia, bacteremia means there's a presence of a microbe in the blood. If the bacteria are present and they are now growing, they are increasing in number, they have established, you have an active, flourishing infection. They refer to that as septicemia or sepsis or septic. Okay? It's a fine line difference between bacteremia, septicemia. It's whether or not the bacteria have established themselves long enough to begin increasing in numbers. Okay? Bacteremia, given time, will become septicemia. Okay? Given time, septicemia will lead to that last line there known as septic shock. Okay? This is an overactivation of both sides of the immune system, which will lead to what we refer to as a clinical shock. Okay? The different chemokines and cytokines that will be released by cells in the vicinity of the bloodstream will cause the walls lining your blood vessels. Those cells will thin out, allowing more fluids to leak out. Remember, that's inflammation. That's why near the site of infection or site of a wound, it swells up, because those capillary beds now become even more leaky. Well, this is going to happen not only in all capillary beds, but it's going to start to happen in the arteries and the veins. And blood volume is now going to start to decrease at a rapid rate. Blood volume starts to decrease. Your brain tells your heart, start beating faster. Beat faster, keep what blood is there flowing. Keep it flowing so you can keep the brain oxygenated. Because your body doesn't recognize the blood's still there. It's just now in the, in the tissues. Because this same shock is what's going to happen if you have a major traumatic injury. Your leg gets cut off and you're bleeding out that way. Same shock, but here it's a closed system, or not, the closed system's now open and bleeding into your tissues. So the same shock that would kill the wounded person is now going to kill the patient who has a blood infection.